Okay, well, it's 1 minute past 3, and I like to try and start our DFI webinars on time. So I'm going to say welcome to the attendees that we've got, and I'm sure a few more will be joining us shortly. Just a couple of reminders. So remember that we are recording our webinars. We will be posting into our DFI website and into our League of Digital Finance Professionals. So if you do happen to miss part of the webinar or you enjoy it so much, you can share it with colleagues via that channel, and I'll be emailing it to everybody as well afterwards. So we're recording, and also just to remind you, we'd love to hear your questions. So as you go through the webinar with us today, there's a little functionality at the very bottom that kind of pops up on your screen. One of those looks like a filing cabinet and it's labeled Q&A. Please do pop your questions for us in there because it will help me manage them better at the end of our presentation that we've got today. So thanks for everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited to introduce two almost CDFP graduates. So this is one of their last things they've got to do to earn credits before they become certified digital finance practitioners with DFI. So we're hopping over to see them in Rwanda. We've got Edmund Machengeti and Robinson Mbai. Both work at Bank of Kigali and have been on the Digital Frontiers Institute journey with us for a couple of years now. So it's fantastic that they are with us and can share some of the research that they've done around sports betting and digital credits that also contributed towards them achieving their CDFP status. So I'm going to be quiet now and hand over to Edward and Robinson to take us through their presentation. So over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So hello everyone, Robinson here. So we'll start off our presentation. We'll go through the history of gambling. We'll look at the factors of how gambling really works. We'll go into the nitty-gritties. We'll look at the regulation around betting, gambling. We'll also look at the issues to do with regulated and unregulated entities relating to gambling and sports betting. We'll also look at items to do with financial inclusion and how this relates to both digital credit and sports betting. Then from there, we'll present what we found out in terms of the relation between sports betting and digital credit. How are these two related to each other? How are these two interacting? We'll close off looking at the society and government reaction to sports betting and what has been the consequences of the action that has happened, and we'll present our conclusions after the end of this webinar. So we look forward to starting off on this. So just to begin on the history of gambling. Gambling is as old as mankind, if you can say that. While there's been one way or another of the way gambling has been taking place, the earliest evidence comes from China, which was around 2300 BC, whereby they unearthed what appeared to be tiles which have been used in the game of chance. So this was where we will find out that this was where gambling started off in terms of to be used. So they also used something like kennel slips. This one also found around 200 BC. So it was some sort of state lottery fund. So gambling has been there as long as we've been having humankind. There's also around 500 BC where there was mention of dice in Greek history. So this one also, playing cards were found in 800 AD in China. We have no way of really knowing the rules which are there. And also you see Baccarat was around 1400 AD, which was in Italy. Then we moved to France, whereby there was a version of it, and also a version of Baccarat in Cuba. We also have blackjack, which was mentioned around the 1600s in the first casinos, which appeared in Italy in the 17th century. Then you have the roulette wheel, which came up in Paris gaming houses in the 1790s. Then you have poker, some form of poker, the one which you know in New Orleans in the 1820s. And then it gained popularity in the 70s in Las Vegas. And then, of course, now you have what we might call or what might be thought of as the modern ways of gambling, where you have popularly known as the one-arm bandit or the EGM machine, whereby it made appearance in New York in the 1890s. So gambling has always been there for as far as the history of mankind has been there. So that is our basis that gambling is nothing new. It's only that the way humans have interacted on gambling, it has been there. So gambling has always been a way of social interaction and a way for people to actually interact. If you move to East Africa, if you check on the story for Africa it's a bit different. For Africa, it's not well documented. I mean, but it can be traced as far back as the 1600s, whereby we had things to do with horse racing, which was a popular pastime in the north of the continent, like in North Africa, for hundreds of years. It's still used as a way for members of the society to socialize, show their prowess, or communicate status to community members. So even though it is mostly a Muslim area and Islam looks unfavorably on gambling, it's still practiced widely. In West Africa and also in areas of Congo River, you can see that there are tribes in southern parts of Nigeria which were also practicing one form or other of gambling. For example, games like Wari, or also known as Mancala or Solo, was played as a war strategy game. But there was no serious or organized gambling in Eastern and Southern Africa before the introduction of gambling. So in East Africa, I would say it's before the pre-colonial days, not well documented, but the practice became after, it was most likely introduced by the colonialists or the settlers when they arrived, and then it became a pastime when it was introduced. So you find like it mostly happened in casinos, maybe in the 50s. You had the traditional ways, something like horse racing, national lotteries, which have also been popular in terms of gambling. But remember, there's also unlicensed gambling, which used to happen. For example, the card games, which used to happen in the areas where people were not allowed to go to casinos. Remember at that time, colonialism. So there's been a lot of ways that gambling and betting has always been part and parcel of the society. So I'll move on quickly to how actually gambling works. So like I mentioned, there are many types of gambling, or many types of ways people can be able to bet. You have your national lotteries, you have things like your casino, you have your pool betting, you have your sports betting or mobile betting. But all of these are based on the premise that you have a chance to win more money than you wager. So, for example, if you put down, let's say, 100 on your favorite sports team, you have a chance of maybe winning 400 or 500. But gambling, really, how it works, it's a very interesting concept, which I will get to. So normally, I'll pick up on sports betting because that's what we're focusing on. It's very easy for these days for people to sign up, because you just sign up for an account, maybe using your mobile phone, mostly your mobile phone, or you can maybe just walk straight to a betting branch or a betting outlet, sign up for betting. Then the account verification and activation process. Then you can be able to fund your account either using mobile money, either using a card if it's possible, or you can just, if you're at a betting outlet, you can just give them cash and place your bet. So that is how you can be able to do your gambling. So you find that most of it will have their some betting or gambling entities have something like maybe a wallet whereby you can store your money and you can always bet. For those ones which are part of an application or a mobile or iPhone app, you can be able to store your money in the wallet. So how normally it works, you find that there are things called, there's something called odds, the betting odds, whereby you come for a favorable outcome. What we found out is people normally bet on their favorite team. For example, Edmond is a big fan of
Manchester United.
Manchester United. Very sorry. So maybe when Manchester United are playing, Edmond will want to place a bet that Manchester will win. Maybe they are playing against another team like Liverpool or Arsenal. So you find that people mostly they look at the teams they like, or they do a bit of analysis that they see that maybe my team, my favorite player is well, or they look at the opposing team, they say, you know what, the top goal scorer is maybe sick, hasn't scored in a long time. So that's how people normally do betting.
Yeah.
But we find that this is really not the best way to go about it, and I'll explain how this works. For example, I'll take a coin toss. If you take a coin, it has heads or tails. So the chances of you getting either heads or tails is really 50%. So each outcome is likely. Like there's a 50% chance of heads or tails for you to be able to, for when you do the coin toss. So for example, if I'm betting, let's say I want to bet $10 on this wager, I will say that there's a 10% chance heads will come, or there's a or if I can bet $30 that it will become tails. Now, if you bet on heads, it will be the obvious choice because you'll get 50% chance of winning either way. But the payout is higher. That means that if you bet on heads, instead of winning, you'll win $30 on heads, but you'll win only $15 on tails. So what normally people should look for is wagers which have positive values, and these are what we call the odds. So we should explain maybe how the odds work. This is normally it's applied as it's shown as a point form on the betting slips, but you can apply a formula which is always between 0 and 1, which is the correct way to express the probability. For example, if you take the heads, which had a probability of 3, it would be 1 divided by 3 times 100 to get that 3%. If you take the same for tails, which for example was 1.5, you'll get it 66%. So if someone is betting, you should probably look at wagers which have a positive value in the long run instead of those with a negative value. So there are a lot of myths which come on how gambling really works. And one of the big myths which is there is betting on your favorites will always give you a profit. The other one, which is, for example, if you bet on a particular number, you'll always be able to win. Or if you bet over, let's say, a period of time, your odds will always be favorable. This one is turned out not to be true because how it works is the companies are there to make sure that they can be able to make a profit from the consumers, and then they'll be able to entice more consumers to come in. So the way they do it, it's they put, like you can say, it's lots of incentives to bring gamblers on board. For example, they offer freebies, they offer startup bonuses, immediate payouts. So those are the kind of things which bring punters on board or bettors on board. So
ability to re-bet the win.
Exactly. So in terms of the regulations which are there on betting, I'll move on to the next slide. So this slide which we have here, it's a very interesting slide. It has areas where betting is completely banned, and areas whereby there is local casinos, banned, foreign not banned, and then unlicensed, and then whereby a license is required for casinos. It also shows the way of how the regulations we have in terms of betting for for East Africa. So if you take on East Africa, most of the regulations, they are uneven, but normally you find that they're controlled by a government entity, whether it's an act of parliament, whether it's a betting control and licensing board. So for example, or it's a lottery department. So for example, in Kenya, you have your betting control and licensing board, which controls all betting, and it's mandated by an act of parliament. You find the same is in Uganda. They have the National Lotteries Act and the Gaming and Pool Betting Control and Taxation Act, which regulates gambling. In Tanzania, you have the Gaming Board of Tanzania, established under the Gaming Act Cap 41. Then this is also responsible for issuing licenses to all gaming regulations or gaming entities which are there. In Rwanda, there are new laws which are recently introduced in the gaming sector in 2014, which under the Service Industry Development Policy of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which is the unit which is responsible for regulating gambling. So each of the countries which you looked at, the 4 East African countries, they have their own way of how they regulate the gambling entities. So some you find they are very tough on sports betting. Some you find they are more tough on the lotteries. So it kind of uneven. There's no one way which each country or all the countries regulate their gambling on. If you check on if you move to the next slide, for regulated and unregulated entities, this is a very interesting slide because you can be able to see basically some of the promotions, which I'm sure some of you have been part of. I'll take, for example, in Kenya, there was a very popular show called Omopika Box, whereby contestants used to come to a show, and then there used to be numbered boxes. So the contestants need to choose maybe box number 1 or maybe box number 9. And then inside each of these boxes, maybe you can find the keys of a car, you can find maybe you want electronics, or you can find a matchbox.
Box or nothing.
Nothing, toothpicks, cash. So this is where it goes. We didn't have, yes, there was maybe the betting control board, which was there, but mostly there was not a lot of regulation. Also, some popular ones you see sometimes SMSs, where you're told SMS your name to a particular number to win, or SMS the word win to this number for you to be able to win some cash, and you are registered. Maybe the SMS is on a premier service, you're charged. So there are always these kind of gambling ways or betting ways, and some of them they're actually run by very established companies. So it's always been there. Or you can have they give you slogans like bet it as low as 1 shilling, bonuses when you bet maybe on Friday, you stand a chance to win a bonus, instant withdrawal. There are all these ways for gambling to happen, encouraging people to do the gambling. Then you also have items like for unregulated betting. In the bottom of the slides, you can see a popular game called Dice. So this is whereby maybe people on the streets, they bet some money that I'll get a 7 or I get a double, something like that. So it's unregulated. And of course, most of us, if you are from Africa, you've seen the card games, very popular, whereby you just find someone on the street corner, they have like 3 cards, they tell you find the king or find the jack, they shuffle them around, place some money here. Of course, most of them are scams or they're very good at the job, but you find that these are some of the unregulated ways of betting. So we've just put some highlight, but of course we have things like there are really serious unregulated betting entities whereby they play high-stake games and people bet and wager a lot of the houses. Yes. So the fact is that gaming has always been there, and gaming, one way or another, documented or not, it will always be part of humans and how they interact and how they want to engage. But whether one stands a great chance of winning or not, that one again is a discussion which we need to get into. And from our research, we've seen that it's really not a game of luck. The odds are always stacked against the Panthers for that. So we'll move to the next slide where we discuss about financial inclusion, and we'll let Edmond take us through.
All right, thanks, Robin, for the introduction and how the sport betting works. I'm Edmond. Like what Sarah said, we work together at Bank of Kigali. I'm going to take you through the financial inclusion part of the sports betting, its relation to digital credit. From this slide, you can clearly see that there's been a good penetration of mobile phones into the society, looking at about 4.4 billion in 2016, with that penetration rate of about 52%. Quite interestingly, like I'm sure everyone on this webinar, you have a phone right now. How many times do you look at your phone in a day? The adverts that come through, and if you look at it, most of these adverts are actually betting, if I may put it like that, which is quite interesting. If we move to the next slide, according to the Bill and Melinda Gates, the percentage of people who are actually digitally enabled, they've got this 85% financial access. So there's that financial inclusion aspect when it comes to connectivity. I was looking at the very interesting statistics from Tanzania. About half the rural population or the unbanked citizens, they actually own a phone, as much as their income is less than $2 a day. And what do they use this phone for? It's mostly for transactions during the day, exchanging funds via wallets. If you go across to Kenya, almost everyone has got a phone, and as much as they don't use the internet for these applications, they still use the M-Pesa, which is also part of financial inclusion. When you move into these bars, like what my friend was saying, they always have a phone. They place their wagers using the phone, and they get their results on the phone, and then they're able again to bet that money via the wallet or via over the counter if they don't have that phone. Now we just look at the Sub-Saharan Africa. This is a very quite interesting slide. If you look at the SIM connections that have been happening, excluding the cellular Internet of Things, you're looking at about 774 million by 2018. What I really liked about this slide is that the mobile industry contribution to the GDP, which is the gross domestic product, is actually increasing. We're looking at 144 billion in 2018. So there is the financial aspect part of it. I was just discussing with Robin how these governments are playing around these betting companies. There is some sort of income they get through this sports betting. This actually, again, touches the point of regulation. Should it be really strict or should it not be strict? Because there is money involved, there's income involved. There's also the kind of people who are doing these bets, are they employed or they're not employed? This again touches the number of unique mobile subscribers from the different countries. We're looking at 456 million in 2018. Robin can have 3 SIM cards. Those are 3 subscriptions, or he can have 1, or he can have multiple SIM cards. So it's a very interesting figure to look at. You also look at the employment part of it. Most of these guys who do the betting, these are the young guys who are just finished school, looking for something to do. Some are even still in school, so they go and use the money for school and then do the betting. They might win, they might not win. It's something that is also contributing towards this sports betting in Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Edmond. So we want now to make a comparison between sports betting and digital credit and how we see it ties into each other. I'll discuss first a bit of aspects on digital credit. There are different players currently offering digital credit in East Africa. We have your traditional players who hold different data. For example, for traditional data, they are mostly held by banks and microfinance institutions. These are like your SACCOs, your lending companies, and then you have your non-traditional data. These are normally held by telcos, by e-money issuers or the payment service providers. the large billers, and then you have something like the lending platform. So this data is what is used to come up with the automated credit scoring, so that when someone is registering for digital credit or mobile credit, they actually get your score once you give an approval for them to do your credit scoring, and they come back with how much you can be able to borrow based on your behavior. So the number of different players we have in East Africa for now. We have of course M-Shwari, which is a product from Safaricom telco in Kenya. You have KCB M-Pesa, which is a joint collaboration between Kenya Commercial Bank which is a regional bank in East Africa, and then you also have partnership with Safaricom, their M-Pesa product. You have Equity, which have the Easy Loan, Easy 24/7. So it's a bank and telco product. You have some the M-Pop Cash, which is also a joint between cooperative bank based in Kenya and then the telco. You have Tala, which is a startup. You have Branch. So there are many sorts of lending companies which are there, and these are the ones which have the data you need. Now, if you come on the part of the sports betting, what sort of profile are we looking at if you compare with digital credit? So we looked at it from 5 aspects of technology, the marketing channels used, the user profile, the average amount, and then the reason for the activity. So if you take on sports betting, the technology normally used is mobile and USSD, the app mostly, and then you also find people just walk into the betting centers.
Over the counter.
Over the counter, yes. Then you have for marketing channels, mostly social media. Here they normally use influencers, Instagram influencers, Facebook, things like that. Yet they use above the line adverts on TV, billboards, and then you also find the radio. There's below the line whereby they use SMSs, community radio, road shows. So these are the kind of marketing channels they use. For the user profile, from our studies, we find that it's, as the picture shows, mostly young men. We're not saying it's only young men who borrow, but it's mostly young men between the ages of 18 and maybe 35, 34. So they're like 36.7% of them are males to 36.1% for females. Male youth participation in gambling is about 45.6%. Most are up to secondary educated, but not saying we don't have post-secondary educated. Middle income, they form the highest number of bettors, with 35% of them highest income, 35.1% lowest, and 20%. But remember here we have, when you're talking about income, you're talking about household income per capita between $10 to $20 a week. So it's not a high amount. Then you have most of them bet around $10 to $20, $20 to $25 per week. That's how much they bet. The average amount waged is between 5 and 30, and the reason for the activity, if they are asked, they normally say betting for them has become an income-generating activity, or it's something that they do for them to earn more money. If you look on the side of digital credit, again, the technology mostly used is mobile, USSD app mostly for them to promote the service. The marketing channels, again, social media, above the line, TV, billboards, radio, below the line, community radio, SMS. User profile, again, it's young urban males who normally do it. 54%, for example, in Kenya, those are the people who do digital credit or borrowing, and 64%, 54% in Kenya, sorry, and 64% in Tanzania. And then you find the average amount which is borrowed for digital credit is between $10 and $30, with over 50% of the people are borrowing, they're borrowing less than $135. So that is the amount which normally is being borrowed for digital credit. The reason for borrowing, you find mostly it's household needs, which is quoted, or business needs or business purposes. So at 35% and 37% respectively, for the reason of borrowing. One thing which we found interesting was the late loan repayment percentage. In Kenya, it's 47%, and you find in Tanzania it's 56%. So maybe we could be asking the activity, could this late loan repayment be due to factors that maybe the losses they made when they did the sports betting? So it could be something which we can be able to discuss at the end of this presentation. If you look at the reaction from society and governments, we don't want to get into the
moral part of it.
into the moral part of betting or gambling, but we just want to present how has the East African community reacted to sports betting, and what is the overall feeling or view on betting. So we have clips here which we got from different media outlets. For example, you have Uganda bans sports betting. Others saying sports betting was the right thing to do. In Tanzania, clerics are pushing for sports betting ban. In Rwanda, the gaming and betting laws are getting tighter. Then Kenya bans sports betting on social media, billboards. Then you have whereby a legislator in Kenya is calling for the president to ban sports betting. Then you have whereby a popular sports betting company quit the market due to increased tax rates. So you find that for society and the government, they have a strict or negative view on this. Reason being, which are normally given, it's taking the youth away from productive activities they can be doing. It's taking their money away from them, which they could have used for better things. A lot of the companies are making huge profits, and maybe they're not being taxed enough. So normally you find that betting operators are being taxed from maybe 25% to 50%, which they claim is high. So there's been a lot of friction or feedback on this. You find some of the people they support the activity, saying we earn taxes from the activity. These companies have been licensed by the regulator, so whatever they're doing is not illegal. And it also again come back to us as society. We can pose a question: do we have a right to tell people what to do with their money, especially if someone is above legal age? Or are we saying that for these sports betting companies, they are actually taking advantage of people in the society, and they are taking the money which could be used for other income generating activities or which could be used for better purposes, and they are using that money to ship out? So it's a lot of back and forth. There are a lot of different views, but mostly you find out that the reaction has mostly been negative, with the regulators, government, or society actually clamping down on sports betting. So we'll move to almost at the end of our presentation, where we want to present our conclusions on what we found out for sports betting. So as we started out, gambling is old, as old as time, as long as humanity has been there, based from China. It's normally a way for people to socialize. And we found out that normally for bookmakers and sport betting companies, they always operate on a profit margin. They always have to find a way that they can be able to cover costs and return. Of course, it's an investment. So between 10 and 43%. And therefore, they normally don't offer true odds when someone is doing the betting. It takes us back to the phrase, the house always wins. It's normally not a matter of luck. In the long run, you find, yes, you can get lucky, but normally you find that their company is the one which always walks away with the money. There are lots of incentives which are offered to bettors for them to encourage betting. Example, 100% bonus on first deposit. First bet is free. You get a VIP status. So there are a lot of ways to encourage you to come back and for people to actually pick it up. For East Africa, betting is not banned per se. However, it's regulated and it's heavily taxed. For example, on average, for each 100 you place, for example, on a wager, the government will get 18% in tax average, but of course it can range higher. Betting companies get 43%, and then you get the people who are actually bringing the money, they get on average 39% of whatever has been wagered. as a bet. So we also find out that the mobile phone penetration has led a lot to financial inclusion, and this has seen that leads to a lot of the digital credit, which has also been supported by mobile phone penetration. Most users of digital credit and sports betting are young and urban males. So that is the profile. So of course we have other people who are betting. We're not saying it's only them. Affordable mobile handsets, improved network connectivity, accessible by USSD also contribute to the growth of digital credit. And you find that also this is also what has contributed to the influencing of growth in sports betting, whereby you have high usage of mobile phones, um, which also the ease of getting digital credit has also influenced. But we also find out that there is a lot high unemployment in Africa and East Africa among the population is leading to them whereby they say sports betting is a way for me to be able to make some money because there are no jobs or there are no well-paying jobs. And then you find there's an even gambling regulation in East Africa. So that one is also a part. And you find that the popularity of sports is what has also led to a lot of sports betting picking up. People are football crazy. They spend all their time watching football. You can be in one venue and there are like 10 or 20 screens showing different matches which you can watch all the time. We found that most betting companies in East Africa, they are registered in foreign jurisdictions. So these are, for example, the tax havens, and they're owned by foreigners. So this comes back again to all the money that these sports betting companies are making. You find that they're wired outside Africa. So again, it comes back to the issue of is sports betting or is gambling hurting the people who it's taxed. So most punters don't know that these companies are not even owned by people from their jurisdiction. So they think this company, maybe because they use the social influencers or they have the local names, maybe they associate it with themselves, but in reality they are owned by people who are maybe just foreigners and they're purely there for investment. So we put forth that
coming back to that, the same for foreign jurisdiction. I think this is where we see the aspect of the friction between the regulators and these company owners. They don't know where the money is going. It's just people betting, people losing money, and then at the end of the day, the money is wired outside the continent or the country. So this actually is another point that needs to be looked at when it comes to regulating these betting companies. So
I agree with you, Edmond. I mean, I think that also brings the point of the taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, the money is leaving our country. We are not gaining anything from it. Can we tax them heavily so that we can get the money maybe for schools, for hospitals, things like that. So we found that both of these activities are actually feeding into each other. Digital credit has had a lot of positive impact by making credit more available or easy for someone to be able to get some money without filling in forms, queuing. People have been traditionally excluded from not only credit but digital finance. But then we find that most of the people who normally use the digital credit services, they could be actually generating or taking that money and placing it into the sports betting activity or to the gambling activity, which of course we would love to have more discussions on or more say on how it happens. So that is how we found on our conclusions, and we welcome a chance to discuss with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was super interesting, and for me, I think one of the things you mentioned right at the end there, that sports betting is not necessarily just exploitative for the person that perhaps is putting their money at risk, but also for the country as a whole, given that most of the income is leaving the country. So I guess there is a bigger picture here. It's not just about the individual who's losing money, but the country as a whole. And as you said, if it was taxed better, the money at least could be potentially put to some good use.
Right.
What are your personal views on that? I mean, share a little bit more with us if you could.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that question, Sarah. This is where now we've seen the text being applied to these companies. it's sometimes very high, to the extent that the company goes to the extent of closing down the shop or whatever people are doing the betting. Then you also go to where the tax is being increased just to encourage local companies to do the startups for that business. So it's a very interesting question. I don't know, my colleague.
I think governments at heart, their foundation is service to the people, and they will try their best to be able to provide services or provide what the people need for them to be successful. And if they see the activity of sports betting is money is being taken outside the country from this activity, you find that they're getting, maybe the companies are getting 48%, which if they're foreign owned and based in tax haven, the monies are moving out. So my views, the industry itself, it needs to see a way of how it can give back to society. I know we have companies which do things like they do CSR activities, they promote football companies, but then again, it comes back out of the percentage of what they have earned, how much is being injected back to community. So the question should be how much should they be taxed and how much should they inject back in the community in terms of CSR activities. Maybe that's where we should go back, because people are going to keep betting, and if it's not regulated, it's just going to go underground.
So it's also not only about how much is being injected back into the economy, but you're also looking at the legal age, because if I do the betting using my mobile phone, I could be under 18, I could be underage, and then I could be also involved in these scams and et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite an interesting discussion on the regulation part of it.
Absolutely, and I think that was going to be my next question to you, and I'll come to some of the Q&As that are coming in from the attendees at the webinar in just a second. So anyone listening to us, please keep your questions coming in the Q&A. But my question was going to be, like, how much is this a government issue? I mean, should the governments be doing more? Should there be more regulations, or should we also look at financial education? Is it also people knowing what the odds are, for example, knowing that they're likely to lose more than win in the majority of cases? Where's the line between those two things?
I think I would say for the government, it's a case of the right hand not doing what the left is doing. For example, if you take the case of the high unemployment among the youth, I mean, this one is something you place squarely on the feet of government. I mean, they have the mandate to plan for these young people who are coming into the working force. They should be able to put the right policies. Even if someone cannot get a job, they should be able to do self-income generating activities for their own. But you find that the entrepreneurship environment is so difficult for young people that it's unable for them to even start up a business. And you find that let's say, for example, if I have $100, I want to start something small, I'm taxed something like $35. So it's again an issue of government. On one side, they say, let's protect our people by taking these sports betting companies and giving them heavy taxes and making environment hard. But then on the other side, not providing any income generating activity for the young people. So I think governments should look at themselves, not only themselves, but also, if you take an issue of financial education, it's very expensive to carry out. And you only do financial education for someone with money. So if someone doesn't have money, what are they going to plan? They live day to day. So it's almost a chicken and egg situation. I'd say government plays a big part in ensuring that even the addiction or the motivation to do sports betting for young people is not there. So it becomes, yes, I can bet, but I don't have to do it to survive. So that is, I think, if a government is to focus on something, let them focus that young people, they don't have to take up sports betting to survive. Then from there, now we'll have something to talk about on sports betting, whether it's addictive or the measures you can put in place.
So what am I sort of in response to that? So actually sports betting is almost becoming a way of earning an income now for some people. It's moved away from just being a social activity, which you charted nicely through history, but actually it's now becoming a more recognized way of earning money for young people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I think
Correct.
for some young people, they find that is a way for them to earn some extra money. But again, if you look at the numbers, they are losing more than they're earning, because if they are getting only 39% on average of what they wager, for you to win, someone must lose. So it's also now comes back again to the education. Maybe we should not focus on financial education, but let's educate people on how actually this sports betting work. And then let's also combine that with, you know, you don't have to bet, you don't have to gamble. There's these other ways for you to earn an income, or there's these other ways for you to get an income. I think the fastest way for us to do it, I think it would be to take our legislators and let them survive on the amount of money the better they're surviving on every month, and see whether they'll improve the regulations.
Absolutely. I mean, and we can say that, you know, we definitely know, I mean, a lot of us in this field would say that the mobile phone and mobile money has been a massive positive influence on financial inclusion, particularly within Africa, where mobile money works so well. But is this one of the negatives?
Come up again with your question, sorry.
So we know the mobile phone and the mobile money have brought so many positives to increase financial inclusion.
Correct.
Is the availability of sports betting and similar kind of things on these devices, is it just an inevitable consequence, do you think, of the development? And what impact might it be having, you know, on consumers and on financial inclusion?
Yes, I think so. I think it is one of the negative aspects which has come in. But then I would not be so quick to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I would say what needs to be there is better data analysis. For example, if on when I'm doing my credit scoring, for example, it's Edmond borrowing. I'm doing my credit scoring. I'm going through his mobile history, and I see he uses mobile money to place wagers, place bets. I should be able to flag and say, you know what, maybe Edmond is using this money not to improve himself, but maybe just to try and earn more money. But then it comes back again to the question: as people who are of legal age, are we in a position to tell people what to do with their money? I mean, take for example a laborer who's in the rural area. Maybe for 1 month's work, they'll be able to earn 300, for example. But if they place a wager on maybe their favorite team or something, they'll earn 300 within 90 minutes. So are we again becoming social police or moral police, telling people where this money will go? Or are we looking at it from the average perspective? If you're looking at it from, let's say, government level, whereby you see most of the money is going out, definitely we should be able to put some controls in place. But if we are looking at it from an individual perspective, I would say for us to be able to counter it, let's analyze the data better. I'm sure there are better algorithms out there which can be able to analyze what people are doing with the money. And since we know the negative effects of gambling, we could be able to find out where these people are taking the money and maybe affect someone's credit score based on what they do with the money with. I think that's my point of view, basically.
And Henry has got a sort of a similar question there, really. I mean, he's been asking, you know, has digital credit and sports betting actually, you know, make an impact on financial exclusion? You know, so that basically the failure to win or the failure to pay back your credit actually may then result you being banned from accessing, you know, digital credit and products in the future.
Yes, I think it could be one of the aspects. I'll take an example of the popular M-Pesa product. For some people, the only reason they have a SIM card line or a mobile money account is simply to transfer money. That is their use case. That is what works for them, M-Pesa. So you might find that for others, the only reason they have that mobile credit or that wallet is to place wagers for sports bet. And if over time, which naturally happens that they will lose, they'll tend to associate that product with, I've lost so much money because of this product. So they associate the ability for them to transact digitally or for the financial with the financial losses. So it could be one of the things which leads to financial exclusion. Of course, you don't pay the loans you've taken digitally, you're blacklisted. Of course, you can't pay. Maybe you've wagered so much, you've lost so much, your loans are so high. You find that, you know what, for me, I don't need to be on this digital finance thing. Let me go back to what I'm used to. And the way these days telcos and financial institutions are sharing data with the credit reference bureaus, you can't really run away. So it could be an aspect that is excluding people, but we need to research more on it and get back.
Interesting question from Tabonga there, where he's asking about if there's any banks or financial institutions that are allowed to participate in sports betting, either by way of providing the actual credit facility. From my research, we've not seen the involvement of financial institutions or banks. What I can only say from experience is people borrowing credit on their phones. He's borrowing this credit. Then you transfer that credit into his wallet. After transferring the money to the wallet, then they start doing the betting. So you can see this more on the telco side. Financial institutions, not that I know of. I don't know, Robbie.
No, I have not seen.
We have not seen that yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe it's happening somewhere else, but from our research, not yet.
And are there a lot of studies out there looking at this association between digital credit and sports betting, or is it still a field we need to learn more about? And thanks, Edward, for that question.
No, from the research we didn't find a lot. We found a lot on digital credit standalone. There's so much studies which have been done about the mobile phone, the success of M-Pesa, wallets. It's a ton of information, and most of it is positive, most of it is good. But on the side of sports betting, most of the research we came across was on issues to do with morality, addiction, loss of funds, someone mortgaging their house or selling their house, selling all their property, putting all the money in one game, regulation, how the governments are not happy about betting, religious leaders not happy, families broken due to sports betting, people falling sick, people not eating, not able to sleep, crooked games set up. So it was all about the negative aspect of sports betting. But a link between the two, we didn't come across much material, so we had to try and link it between what is the user profile, what is the personas we're talking about in these two activities. So that is now where we came to find out that it's mostly the young urban males, most of them, they're unemployed. So it's something that we need more research on. I'm excited that now we can, with the advancements in AI, big data, we should be able to have more data on this and more information.
Yeah, I guess we haven't got enough information that allows us to track whether it's the same users and how they're using the money, but over time we'll be able to understand that connection a little bit more.
Yeah.
We've got a question that's come in from Joyce as well. So Joyce was giving us some information about Kenya. So 75%, as researched by CGAP, are using smartphones to bet. So it's not just the poor or not just, young urban men, it's actually quite widespread, hey? Why do you think people are sports betting? Is it for fun, or is it to make extra money, or what else? What else is influencing this?
I would say it's, if you look at it from the aspect of how the economy is performing for the common folk, you'd find that most of the people there, for them, it's become an income generating activity or a way for them to make some money. And then we come back again to how the sport betting companies are actually packaging this activity. It's packaged well, it's packaged attractively. They have the local influencers. You see someone winning a check of maybe 200 million Kenya shillings, which is something like $2 million. I mean, life-changing amounts of money. You get stories of your friends telling you, I put a bet of 300, I got 3,000. it's packaged really attractively. And for someone, maybe you've not seen that kind of money, or that kind of money can really solve some of the financial issues you have. Of course, you're going to be attracted. You're going to say, you know what, let me try out. Let me see how it will go. So if the economy is not really doing too well, or if people think that, you know what, I can be able to place some money here, I will win, or I have a chance of winning a good amount of money, I'm going to do it. So you find that it's also tied back again to the high unemployment, lack of better wages. It comes back again to that kind of aspect whereby people say, I need a way for me to make ends meet. How am I going to support my family? Sports betting, I hear it everywhere. It's on social media, it's on radio. My friends are telling me. This person I look up to is telling me to place a bet. I get the first free bet. I get 100% from the bet I make. It's becoming, the companies have really started the market well, and the personas of the people doing who they want to attract. And it's unfortunate that it's now being seen as something someone can do to earn some extra income. So that's what.
So yeah, the noise they make on the small percentage of winners is just amazing. With this social media, everyone just want to try. Like you said, even young people working class, some just do it for fun, just to try and see what is being done. Because I've got a smartphone, I can try this. Some of them actually doing try and error to see how the application works. Not that they're actually interested in the betting part of it, but they will try. They will try. Like the story you're telling us about watching soccer and people are drinking, and then all of a sudden there's an advert about betting. Someone just have that interest to see how it works, and then they start winning, and there's an addiction part of it, and then some might not continue to play the bets.
So it's quite an interesting topic, isn't it? I mean, it brings out lots of conversations around the morality of it, and we've talked about, we don't want to get too much into that particularly, but I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people who are against it for many good and justifiable reasons. There's also, like, when it comes to regulation, I mean, I feel like sometimes the marketing and the advertising of these services actually, could be a little bit exploitative, and consumer protection really could be something that we think of there. And we've talked about the role of governments in regulating and making sure that these companies are acting in the best possible way. I mean, I think I really enjoyed how you introduced the webinar with that it's always been there. So this is not a new thing. It's not a new problem. We've always had it in society, but just it's probably more in our faces because of the fact that we've all got these devices. We've all got access to things like the television more, radio more. So it's just more, we're more aware of it, I suppose, as an issue. But it's moving from its history of being more something social that people did, which was more clearly in the earlier centuries, into now being something that people are making an income from due to lack of other employment opportunities, or not just an income, but supplementing an income. We can see from Joyce's statistics that it's not just one part of the population that's sports betting, but it is potentially quite widespread. But it's mainly amongst men. Why are women not involved in sports betting as much?
I would say maybe it's again, like you said, maybe it's the way it's packaged. Most of the winners they bet on their favorite football team, which we only show. I don't know why we only show the men playing football. The Arsenal and Chelsea, it's the men, you never see the women's team. So maybe that's why it's always the men who participate. But also it could be back again. If you look at studies shown up, there are a lot of studies which have been done on financial diaries, on how different people manage their money. Ladies have been found to be more prudent in terms of how they manage their money. Maybe it's because the task of taking care of the family, traditional in Africa, has always fallen on the ladies to do it. So they are more responsible for the well-being of kids. So if I know I have to provide something for my children at the end of the day to eat, I'm not gonna risk this 100 to bet on something which I know I'm gonna lose. Let me use this 100, try and make some more money and get something for my family to eat. So that could be the aspect of what we find the ladies, maybe they are not participating so much in it.
But I'll just also come back to what Robin was saying. maybe if you apply artificial intelligence, you never know. If we give it time and then we see the statistics, I'm sure we'll come up with something. So it's an interesting topic which needs more research. Let's see how artificial intelligence can come up with some statistics that could be used to showcase what is actually happening.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to our very final question, which, I mean, obviously we've heard that, you know, youth unemployment and that, you know, low wages might be influencing sports betting, but is there anything else you think that's changed in society? Any other influences that might be meaning people are swapping to gods, going, you know, to sports betting? Anything, or anything you'd like to do some more research on to look at the links? You talked about using AI, but what else would you like to see done out there in terms of research?
I think I would say with if you take the aspect of identity, if we get a way whereby you can have one identity which permeates through someone's lifetime or whichever platform, channel, country, jurisdiction, we could be able to get more data on it. So we should be able to research maybe aspects between addiction in sports betting and maybe alcohol and drug addiction. Maybe we could be able to look at maybe some of the aspects. It's not maybe only unemployment. Maybe it's an addictive. It is an addictive aspect, but maybe it's linked to alcohol and drug use. So maybe we could do researches on it. And also we could be able to look at, in terms of regulation, out of the different regulations applied on different jurisdictions, what has been the outcome? Which regulation works more than the others in terms of benefiting society? So those are the aspects I would like to get to understand some more.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of the hour for our webinar, so it's been a really fascinating discussion. I think it's opened my eyes to some new things. I mean, I personally often think of sports betting as being a little bit negative, but, you know, as you said, it is giving an important source of income for some particularly young people and for whom employment is challenging for. So there are positives and negatives of both sports betting and digital credit. And like you said, I think we need to try and understand more about the connections, the links, and how we can make sure that the benefits can perhaps be, you know, enhanced, but the negatives, we try and remove them as much as possible. So thank you very much for this really interesting webinar that really explores the links between the two. And yeah, we look forward to perhaps maybe an update at some point in a little while with more research and connections that you're drawing up. So thank you so much, Edmund and Robinson, for your time today. Well done, a great piece of research, and for completing your 3-year journey with DFI to get your certified digital financial practitioner status. We really congratulate you for that. So well done. I'm sure all the others will join me in congratulating you. Thank you to all the attendees for sharing their time with us today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. We'll be sharing the recording along with the research project that Edmund and Robinson have done as well, so that everybody could see a little bit more of the background research and reading that was done. So thank you very much, and reminder to everybody, next week is our last webinar for 2019 on looking at mobile money in Malawi and the developments that have happened there. So yeah, if you've enjoyed the session today, we hope to see you again next Thursday for our final webinar of the year. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.